Up with KREM begins now.
Coming up this morning on Up with KREM, coronavirus forced organizers to cancel or postpone major events. This morning we look at how the pandemic has influenced tourism in Spokane. And this morning, several Spokane police officers are in quarantine. This is after being exposed to a coronavirus patient that was arrested not once but twice in 5 days. Well, happening today, 2 NASA astronauts are scheduled to blast off from Florida's Cape Canaveral. They will head to the International Space Station aboard the SpaceX Crew Dragon capsule. Now, this will be the first time Americans will be launched into space from U.S. soil since July 2011. And that is when the space shuttle program ended. And we're taking a live look at that launch pad this morning. Pretty quiet right now, but boy, the astronauts will be waking up any moment now. They're set to wake up 6 hours before liftoff, which is set for 1:33 our time this afternoon. Coming up this morning at 8:30, we will be talking to our local astronaut and G-Prep graduate, Ann McLean. She'll be joining us live on the program to talk about this historical launch. Well, welcome back to Up with KREM on our Wednesday morning. Great to have you with us. I'm Jen York, joined by my colleagues Joshua Robinson, Evan Arani, and Dana Marie McNichol. Now, Evan, over the past year or so, we've been able to watch firsthand Ann McLean in space. So looking forward to some insight from her on what it might be like for the astronauts today.
It's a really unique perspective because not only is she a local, GU graduate, but we also, of course, have her experience of her time on the space station that she can share with us. So it's going to be fun to hear both of those perspectives, and I think she's going to have a lot to bring to the table with what's to come for the launch day.
And Joshua, it's been some time since we've seen a shuttle lift off from U.S. soil. With our stay-at-home orders, I imagine there's a lot of eyeballs today on this launch.
Oh yeah, what a show it's going to be. There's so much important elements to today, like we've also talked about the fact that it could lend to one step closer to normal people like us that are not trained to be astronauts, getting our own chance someday to make our way into space. So yeah, it's a huge day.
Yeah, definitely for those who are brave enough to go into space. So, of course, that is something we'll continue to track this morning. We are taking a look at the weather forecast, both in Florida and here closer to home. Evan, what are we looking at this morning?
Yeah, well, it looks like if we focus specifically on that Cape Canaveral forecast, we are not looking so hot as far as our chances of clearer skies. It looks like there will be plenty of thunderstorms in the forecast for Cape Canaveral. We are not seeing all that favorable of conditions for this launch. That means that we could see it postponed for later on in the day, but more likely we will see it postponed until Saturday. So we're keeping tabs on this forecast. Of course, we're going to go all the way through the 1 o'clock hour our time and then 4 o'clock hour their time to see if things are favorable enough for the launch. If they are not, then again, this will be postponed until your Saturday. Here locally, though, things are completely dry across the Northwest. We are not looking at thunderstorms or showers. We are seeing completely dry skies. Satellite radar for us in eastern Washington and North Idaho, it shows mostly dry skies and a few light clouds out there. Some filtered sunlight to start off the morning. Hour by hour, we're going to keep warming up to the 70s with a high of 73 here in Spokane. Some forecasts put us as warm as 75, so in that range. Winds are going to stay calm with west-northwesterly winds moving up to maybe the 5-mile-an-hour range, but otherwise not too big of a threat. On that 3-day forecast, we keep warming into the next several days, eventually making it to the upper 80s and low 90s by Saturday. That's going to be the warmest day of the next 7 days before a tremendous cool down comes from Saturday into Sunday with about a 20-degree drop in temperatures. So we'll take a look at that 7-day forecast coming up in just a bit, but for now, I'll send things back over to you guys.
All right, Evan, thank you. It sounds like Florida needs a little bit of our forecast today for this liftoff of this historic launch set for this afternoon in Florida. So, of course, this is history in the making this morning. The SpaceX Crew Dragon capsule will launch today from Cape Canaveral, headed to the International Space Station. It's the first time in nearly a decade that astronauts will lift off from a launch pad on U.S. soil. It's only the 5th time in U.S. history astronauts will launch a brand new vehicle. So what will today look like for these astronauts? Let's break it down. Well, the astronauts will wake up 6 hours before the launch, almost exactly right at this moment. They should be opening their eyes in Florida. Now, they're not late sleepers. It's just so their sleep cycles can adjust for when they arrive to the ISS. They will eat breakfast and get some exercise, and then they will get into those important spacesuits. They will use the same room actually used by astronauts to suit up for the Apollo missions. Now, they will drive Teslas to the launch pad. Very fitting because Tesla CEO Elon Musk founded SpaceX. Now, 2.5 to 3 hours before the launch, they will take an elevator up to the Dragon capsule, where a crew will seal them inside the cockpit. 45 minutes out, the crew will take a poll to make sure they are all still ready to launch. 30 to 35 minutes out, they start the fueling process. And again, liftoff is slated for 1:33 p.m. our time. Of course, this is barring any technical or weather delays. And in the case that we do see it delayed, they do have another opportunity to launch this capsule coming up on Saturday. So, of course, it's still as planned right now to take off at 1:33 our time this afternoon, Joshua. But, of course, we are watching the weather forecast there closely, as Evan mentioned. Thunderstorms in the forecast.
As long as we get a chance to see it this week, I think it would mark a gigantic step forward and a really cool way to end the month of May, too, Jen.
Yeah, and a lot of eyeballs, a lot of people at home. So imagine a lot of people watching either online or on TV where normally they might be at work or at school. So definitely historic for the U.S. and maybe inspiring some young astronauts this morning.
Absolutely. We'll keep our eyes open, of course, on the weather and the launch itself. We'll bring you the latest here on Up with KREM. We also have 3 headlines for you to start out your Wednesday this morning. The U.S. has now reported nearly 99,000 deaths from the coronavirus, out of almost 1.7 million overall confirmed cases throughout the country. Now, while the fatality rate has slowed, the number of cases is still rising in at least 27 states. Now, despite that number, more places are reopening their economies and resuming some level of normal activities. That now includes the city of New Rochelle in New York. That was once the site of the nation's first containment zone. Now, the Washington State Department of Labor and Industries has filed new emergency rules this week. Those new rules say that businesses ignoring pandemic closure orders can be fined and cited for operating in a way that defies the state's phased-in approach. The department is actually calling the coronavirus, quote, a workplace hazard. And these new rules come as several businesses across the state have opened without government approval. Also this morning, the Washington State Department of Health is deploying a strike team of 10 infection specialists to Yakima County. The team's main job will be to help track multiple outbreaks at long-term care facilities. And Yakima County has nearly 30 adult family homes. The strike team will assess outbreaks at a meatpacking plant as well and provide PPE for seasonal farm workers. Dr. Scott Lindquist, who is leading the unit, has requested a CDC epidemiologist to also set up a data dashboard for the county. He says he hopes that will be finalized next week. Several police officers are in self-quarantine this morning after a bizarre and frightening situation earlier this week. Police say a man arrested on Monday possibly exposed 6 officers to the coronavirus. Our Casey Decker explains what happened.
A source familiar with the arrests identified the man as Mordecai Cochran. Cochran told police he had tested positive for COVID-19 and was told to self-quarantine until the end of this week. But instead of isolating, according to police, he was repeatedly driving drunk. The first incident was last Wednesday. At around 3 in the morning, police came to check out a suspicious vehicle that had been parked and running for hours. Inside, they found Cochran, who said he had a 5th of whiskey and didn't know where he was. He was charged with a DUI. The second incident was Monday. Police say they pulled over a car with its taillights out. There were 6 people in the car and Cochran was driving. Police say they found his blood alcohol content to be twice the legal limit. He was again charged with a DUI. After the first arrest, he was booked into jail. When the jail learned he'd tested positive for the coronavirus, they alerted police. The second arrest is when Cochran himself told officers he was supposed to be isolating. Now, it's not only him that has to isolate. SPD has told all 6 officers that came in contact with Cochran they now need to self-quarantine too. So far, none of the officers have shown symptoms. For nearly a month, Spokane County had limited daily new cases to the single digits. Then, in the last week, 5 consecutive double-digit days totaling 78 new cases. Health officials attribute that to an outbreak at the Philadelphia Macaroni Company factory in northeast Spokane. At least 31 people at that company have tested positive. Casey Decker, KREM 2 News.
Thank you very much, Casey. We are also getting a first-time look this morning at some of the data showing just how much the coronavirus has impacted tourism in the Spokane area. According to Visit Spokane, the county so far has lost more than $21 million in revenue due to a number of event cancellations and the loss of travelers over the past few months. Let's take a closer look at these numbers. 35 events, from business conventions to sporting events, were canceled in Spokane starting on March 15th. In total, 25,000 potential visitors to Spokane were also lost this year so far. Hoop Fest and Bloomsday are just some of the events that have been rescheduled for later this year. But according to this data out of Visit Spokane, more than 30,000 hotel room bookings have already been lost due to canceled events. So let's take a closer look at hotels. Hotel occupancy was down more than 64% from March 15th to May 2nd. We're comparing that to the same time last year. Now, Davenport Hotel Collection has closed 4 of its properties and laid off 1,100 people. But the company does say it has plans to reopen properties as early as June 11th. So when Davenport reopens those properties next month, hotel stays are going to look a little bit different for visitors. Masks will be required for guests in the lobby, valet services will be suspended, and guests will be asked to only use elevators with members of their own group. Of course, we're going to keep our eyes on this data as new information comes out in the days ahead. We're also going to take a look this morning at what's trending. Let's welcome back our own Dana Marie McNichol this morning for that look. Dana Marie, good morning.
Good morning, Joshua. That's right. Trending this morning for the first time, Twitter flagged some of the President Donald Trump's tweets. Now, his tweets from yesterday were accompanied by a fact check warning. His tweet read, in part, "There is no way that mail-in ballots will be anything less than substantially fraudulent." That tweet and the one following were given a "Get the Facts About Mail Ballot" warning. So this warning links users to a Twitter Moments page with fact checks and news stories about President Trump's claims about mail-in ballots and voter fraud. Now, Twitter says the president's vote by mail tweet contains, quote, potentially misleading information about voting processes and have been labeled to provide additional context around mail-in ballots. Now, President Trump responded to his tweets being fact-checked by Twitter, saying Twitter is directly interfering with the 2020 presidential election. Now, just to note, this is the first time the social media company has flagged the president's tweets as part of the community guidelines. Joshua.
Thank you very much, Dana Marie. Still to come here on Up with KREM, we take another look at your Wednesday forecast. Sun on the way. How much and how much longer can we expect that Evan Irani returns? The latest.